A top story on the World Report this Tuesday, viewers. Protesters in Los Angeles demonstrated for a fourth consecutive day, against immigration raids. Now this, as US President Donald Trump's move to deploy the National Guard sparked a political clash. California sued the Trump administration Monday for mobilizing the troops without the state's consent, while the president backed comments from his advisor threatening to arrest state leaders, including Governor Gavin Newsom, over the protests. Now, the display of military might, the Pentagon is also deploying 700 Marines to LA, symbolizing the showdown the White House has been waiting for, many are arguing. Meanwhile, some analysts have said that Trump has made immigration a central issue and is now, in fact, seizing the opportunity to spar with the Democrat-led city and depict it as lawless. Sky News' Martha Kellner gets us the latest from Ground Zero.
There's already been a huge amount of controversy about Donald Trump's decision to deploy these troops, the National Guard, onto the streets of Los Angeles. The state governor, Gavin Newsom, said it was a huge overreaction to this situation, that it was Donald Trump's attempt to inflame this situation for cynical political gains. Well, he'll be even more disappointed today with the news that the Defense Department are getting ready to deploy 700 Marines from the nearby town of 29 Palms. It's around 2 hours inland. They're getting ready to deploy onto the streets of LA. It's not clear why Donald Trump is doing this, what circumstance he will be invoking in order to do this. You wouldn't normally see military on the streets when there is not active disturbance and violence to an extraordinary degree. We did see last night, though, lawlessness, certainly, cars being burnt out, police officers being assaulted. We also saw these troops, the LA Police Department as well, deploying tear gas and bullets in an attempt to disperse protesters. I've not seen any of that today. The protests have been largely peaceful. The California National Guard here that you see, almost a couple of dozen of them, they're guarding one of the main federal buildings, the main national government buildings here in downtown LA. Scattered protests, lots of angry language being used. Apologies if you hear any of it. Lots of angry language being used. People annoyed not just now at the immigration tactics being used by Donald Trump's government, but also at the reaction to the protests here by the White House.
Meanwhile, protests against the Trump administration's immigration policies were also reported in two major Texas cities, Dallas and Austin, on Monday night. Now, aerial video from Dallas TV station WFAA, as you see on your screens right now, showed protesters blocking traffic and also facing off against officers. Some demonstrators were detained by authorities. Staying with the US, where a disturbing video of an Indian man being handcuffed and pinned to the ground by authorities at the Newark airport in New Jersey has gone viral on social media, viewers. Kunal Jain, an Indian-American entrepreneur who shared the video, claimed that the incident occurred on June 7th, when the student was in fact scheduled to board a flight but was left behind and later was also deported. Meanwhile, NDTV spoke to Kunal Jain, a witness on the scene. Listen in.
Can you actually describe the moment you first noticed something was wrong, and what exactly did you see playing out in that very moment when you recorded this?
So this is exactly what you see was there in front of my eyes, and I'm the one who's right here behind this row taking the video. And we had like about 50 people with me because I was the first one in a first class right there. But nobody even dared to see. The problem which I did not like about us is that we all are Indians, and we were standing in the line. Why we were just ignoring that fact that it was an Indian guy who was sitting there, two policemen was pinned him down, sitting on the top of it. I have never seen in the last 22 years even a treatment with terrorists like this.
Right.
We have never seen this. Is a
Was
public
there any
humiliation.
warning or conversation before he was pinned down and handcuffed, or did it all happen suddenly?
The reason I think why he was pinned down, because he was a little violent and because he was feeling disoriented. So I didn't know why he was disoriented. They were claiming because they were not able to understand Hindi, and he was speaking like in Haryanvi accent in Hindi. So I thought that probably I can help out. So I even went there and asked one of the police officers, can I help just understanding what he is saying? And he did not allow me to do so. Then one of the doctors showed up and he offered the help. They did not even ask for it. What he did instead, he called more police. Because what happens when there is a patient or a guest who is violent, airlines don't allow them on the plane. So they called the pilot. Pilot showed up and the pilot said, no, we cannot take him on the plane because he is a threat to other passengers. So when that happened, they pinned him down. He was sitting there first, and they pinned him down. And then the worst part was when the other police came, there was about 7-8 police officers showed up. I have sent one more video, you should show it. Like 7-8 police officers showed up.
Right.
They emptied the whole queue all the way the alley from the aeroplane to where we were there, like boarding.
All right.
And they tied his legs and hands and hold him like this, like a kid. And that moment, I literally started crying why they are doing this.
The Chinese scientist has been arrested at the Detroit airport, the second such case in only days involving the alleged smuggling of biological material, US authorities said Monday. Now, the scientist is accused of shipping biological material months ago to staff at a laboratory at the University of Michigan. The FBI, meanwhile, in a court filing, has described it as a material related to certain worms and requires a government permit. Han faces charges of smuggling goods into the US and making false statements, both felony offenses. US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a vaccine skeptic himself, has removed all 17 members of a committee that in fact issues official government recommendations on immunizations. Announcing the move in an editorial on the Wall Street Journal, Kennedy said that conflicts of interest on the Advisory Committee of Immunization Practices, or the ACIP, were responsible for undermining trust in vaccinations. Kennedy further said he wanted to ensure the American people receive the safest vaccines possible. Meanwhile, doctors and health experts have criticized Kennedy's long-standing questioning of the safety and efficacy of a number of vaccines, although in his Senate confirmation hearing he said, and I quote here, he's not going to take them away. US President Donald Trump spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The call took place as Iran is preparing its response to the US proposal for a nuclear deal, and also as the White House is still pushing for a Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal. In a sparse readout of the conversation, Netanyahu's office said the two leaders discussed Washington's ongoing nuclear talks with Tehran. Sticking with West Asia, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces a vote to, in fact, dissolve parliament on Wednesday, that's tomorrow, viewers, and key coalition partners have already threatened to bring down the government. Now, the move to dissolve, called by the opposition, will only pass if Netanyahu's ultra-Orthodox coalition partners break with him over the failure to pass a law exempting the community from military service. An issue that has bitterly divided Israelis, especially during the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip. The dissolution vote is most serious challenge to Netanyahu's government since the war began, and the coalition's collapse could have major implications for Israel and the ongoing war. Here's more on the development.
There still is a chance that the ultra-Orthodox rabbis would not compromise this time and tell to Netanyahu, enough is enough. And either you bring us a reasonable or acceptable law, draft law for us, or we vote against you.
Iran has said it will soon start releasing information from a hoard of Israeli nuclear secrets it claims to have obtained. This as European countries push for a vote this week on reimposing UN sanctions on Tehran over its flourishing nuclear program. The unverified claims by Iranian intelligence of a massive leak of Israeli secrets may very well be designed to turn the focus away from what Iran argues as its own excessively monitored civil nuclear program. On Sunday, in fact, Iran's intelligence minister Ismail Khatib claimed Tehran had obtained a vast collection of strategic and sensitive Israeli documents, including plans and data on Israel nuclear facilities. He added evidence would be released shortly and implied some of the documentation was also linked to Israel's arrest of 2 Israeli nationals. Furthermore, Roy Mirazai and Almog Atias over alleged spying for Iran. Iran's uranium enrichment is a crucial part of the country's nuclear fuel cycle and a key element of its nuclear industry, and it will be never used as a bargaining chip, the country's foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said on Monday. Speaking at a press conference in Tehran, Baghai said the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA's report, does not show any signs of Iran's non-compliance or even deviation from its peaceful nuclear program. As a signatory of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, Iran has the right to enrich nuclear weapons. Listen in.
اصلاً این گونه نیست که هر کشوری که غنی‌سازی میکنه حتماً دارای برنامه تسلیحاتی است. بسیاری از کشورها غنی‌سازی انجام میدن، از جمله خیلی از کشورهای متحد آمریکا، ولی برنامه تسلیحاتی ندارن. همونطور که بارها اشاره شده، برای ما غنی‌سازی به عنوان بخش لاینفک چرخه سوخت، به عنوان جزئی از صنعت هسته‌ایمون موضوعی است غیر قابل مذاکره و معامله، به خاطر اینکه هم صنعتی است بومی و هم بر اساس نیازها و منافع ملت ایران طی دهه‌ها تلاش و ممارست دانشمندان ما ایجاد شده.
Russia launched almost 500 drones and missiles at Ukraine overnight, Ukrainian forces said on Monday, in the largest in a string of record-breaking aerial assault as peace talks stalled. Meanwhile, waves of Russian drone and missile attacks wounded at least 4 people in Kiev in the early morning hours on Tuesday, as many sheltered in subway stations across the Ukrainian capital. Now, the fresh wave of Russian attacks came hours after Moscow launched almost 500 drones at Ukraine in the biggest overnight drone bombardment in the 3-year war. Ukraine and Western officials have been anticipating a Russian response to Ukraine's audacious June 1 drone attack on distant Russian air bases as long as 4,000 kilometers behind enemy lines. Here's more.
В метрополітені ми через атаку, через те, що над головою гудять шахеди, спостерігається балістика і повний жах. А в метро ми, тому що сусідка змилостивилася і підвезла нас. А так ми сиділи просто внизу, на першому поверсі, тому що підвалу в нас в домі нема.
US-China trade talks were set to extend a second day in London as top economic officials from the world's 2 largest economies sought to diffuse a bitter dispute that has in fact widened from tariffs to restrictions over rare earths, threatening a global supply chain shock and slower economic growth. Talks at the Lancaster House, an ornate UK government mansion, wrapped for the night on Monday and were set to resume at 10 a.m. PST on Tuesday, a US source familiar with the negotiations said. Meanwhile, Trump says China is not easy, but talks going well. The negotiations, viewers, set to continue for a second day, will end with a big, strong handshake, US National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett has said. The clearest sign yet that Washington is in fact open to concessions on export controls for products like semiconductors. Across the border, Canada, under pressure to spend more on its military, vowed on Monday to boost funding for the armed forces and hit the NATO 2% military spending target this fiscal year. It's 5 years earlier than promised. PM Mark Carney also said Canada was likely in future to devote a greater percentage of GDP to defense, given the need to replace outdated equipment and also reduce its heavy reliance on Washington. Here's more.
Our plan will help ensure that Canada is strong at home and reliable abroad. We will ensure that every dollar is invested wisely, including by prioritizing made-in-Canada manufacturing and supply chains. We should no longer send 3/4 of our defense capital spending to America. We will invest in new submarines, aircraft, ships, armed vehicles, and artillery, as well as new radar, drones, and sensors to monitor the seafloor and the Arctic.
And shifting focus to Southeast Asia, where Pakistan's debt had increased to Pakistani rupees 76,000 billion in the first 9 months of the current fiscal year. This is according to the economic survey of the country, which indicated that the cash-strapped country's economy is likely to grow only by 2.7% this year. However, Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb, who released the economic survey 24-25 Monday, said Pakistan's economy has been on the path to recovery for the last 2 years or so, Islamabad believes.